"She's not a real sniper." That's what Staff Sergeant Dalton muttered when Corporal Quinn Ashford showed up at Forward Operating Base Salerno with her sniper qualification and orders assigning her to the battalion's precision marksman section. She was 24 years old, had scored 98 out of 100 at sniper school, and carried a rifle that looked too big for her frame. Dalton had been shooting for 8 years and led a 4-man sniper team that had operated in 3 combat zones. When the battalion commander assigned Quinn to his team as their primary shooter for an upcoming operation, Dalton requested a meeting to discuss what he called a personnel mismatch. 3 days later, that operation would change his mind permanently. Corporal Quinn Ashford sat on an ammunition crate outside the Tactical Operations Center at FOB Salerno, field stripping her M110 semi-automatic sniper system for the second time that day. She was 24, compact and muscular with hands that moved through the disassembly process like they'd done it 1,000 times before. Her uniform was faded from sun and dust, broken in from 6 weeks in country. She'd been assigned to 3rd Battalion, 187th Infantry Regiment, as an additional sniper asset, brought in because the battalion was preparing for a large-scale operation and needed more precision fire capability. The problem was that the existing sniper section didn't think they needed her, didn't trust her qualifications, and made it clear she was an outsider. FOB Salerno sat in Coast Province near the Pakistani border, surrounded by mountains where insurgents moved freely, and coalition forces fought for every kilometer. The upcoming operation would push into areas the Taliban controlled, and casualties were expected. Subscribe for more stories about soldiers who proved their worth when everyone doubted them. These stories matter. Quinn grew up in West Texas on a cattle ranch that had been in her family for 4 generations. Her father managed 3,000 acres and 800 head of cattle. Her grandfather still worked the ranch at 71, tougher than most men half his age. They taught her that ranch work required precision, mending fence, vaccinating cattle, managing grazing rotations. One mistake could cost money or livestock. They also taught her to shoot. Coyotes and feral hogs were constant threats to calves. Her father handed her a rifle at 11 and told her if she was going to carry it, she needed to be accurate enough that nothing suffered. One shot, clean kill, no exceptions. She practiced on targets until her shoulder bruised, then practiced on varmints until she never missed. By 16, she was the best shot in her county. By 18, she'd won 3 state-level precision rifle competitions. She joined the army at 20 because the ranch wasn't big enough to support another generation, and because she wanted to use her skills for something larger than herself. Infantry training was hard but manageable. Sniper school was harder. She was one of 3 women in a class of 42. The instructors didn't cut slack. She didn't ask for any. She finished 3rd overall, and her final qualification score of 98 was the 2nd highest in the class. She'd earned her place, but earning it in training and earning it in the eyes of combat veterans were different things. The briefing for Operation Mountain Strike was detailed and sobering. The battalion would clear a series of villages in the Spira district, where Taliban forces had established a strong presence. Intelligence indicated fortified positions, possible IEDs, and an enemy force estimated at 60 to 80 fighters. Air support would be limited due to other operations in the region. Staff Sergeant Dalton's sniper team was assigned overwatch for Alpha Company as they moved through the villages. Dalton would lead, with Corporal Vickers as his spotter. Quinn was assigned to provide additional coverage from a separate position with Specialist Chen as her spotter. It was standard procedure, multiple sniper positions providing overlapping fields of fire. After the briefing, Dalton approached the company commander, Captain Merrick. He said he had concerns about the sniper positioning. Specifically, he questioned whether Quinn had the experience to operate independently in a complex environment. He suggested she work as his secondary spotter instead, with Vickers taking the 2nd rifle position. Captain Merrick asked about Quinn's qualifications. Dalton acknowledged they were solid on paper, but said combat was different. Quinn had been in country 6 weeks. She'd never taken a shot outside of training. Putting her in a primary shooting position during a major operation was, in his assessment, a risk. Quinn was standing 10 feet away, close enough to hear everything. She didn't interrupt. She waited until Dalton finished. Then she spoke. She said her qualifications were identical to his when he'd taken his first combat deployment. She'd been training with her assigned position for 2 weeks and knew the terrain. She understood the mission parameters. If Captain Merrick wanted to reassign her, that was his call. But she wasn't going to accept a demotion based on someone's assumption she couldn't do the job. Captain Merrick looked between them. He told Dalton the assignments would stand as briefed. Quinn would take the second sniper position. If Dalton had issues with her performance during the operation, they'd address it afterward. Quinn walked back to her quarters, a plywood box she shared with 3 other soldiers. She sat on her bunk and felt the anger rise in her chest, hot and tight. She'd dealt with this her entire military career. People who assumed she couldn't do the job before she'd even had a chance to prove herself. It wasn't always hostile. Sometimes it was just doubt, people being protective, thinking they were helping by keeping her out of difficult situations. But the result was the same. She had to work twice as hard for half the credibility. She thought about her grandfather. He'd told her once that some people won't believe you can do something until you do it right in front of them. And even then, some still won't believe it. You can't control that. You can only control whether you do the job right. Quinn pulled out her rifle and started her pre-operation checks for the 3rd time. She verified the zero, checked the scope mounting, inspected every piece of equipment. She calculated ranges to key terrain features from her assigned position. She reviewed wind patterns for the area based on historical data. She prepared like her life and other people's lives depended on her being perfect. Because they did. Specialist Chen, her assigned spotter, was 22 and seemed nervous about the operation. He asked Quinn if she was worried. She said no. Worry didn't help. Preparation did. The operation launched at 05:30 hours. Alpha Company moved into the first village, while Quinn and Chen established their overwatch position on a ridgeline 600 meters to the east. Dalton's team was positioned northwest, covering a different approach. The plan was for both sniper teams to observe, provide intelligence, and engage targets only if coalition forces made contact. The first 2 villages were clear. Alpha Company searched compounds, questioned locals, and found nothing. The tension was building because everyone knew contact was coming. It was just a matter of when. At 08:47 hours, Alpha Company entered the 3rd village. Quinn watched through her scope as the infantry squad spread out, clearing buildings methodically. Chen was on the spotting scope, scanning for threats, calling out movement, helping Quinn track multiple points of interest. Then Chen saw them. Fighters moving into positions on rooftops and behind walls, at least 15 visible, probably more concealed. They were setting up an ambush. Alpha Company was about to walk into a kill zone. Quinn called it in immediately. She reported enemy positions to the Tactical Operations Center, gave grid coordinates, identified weapons. The company commander ordered Alpha Company to halt and take cover. But they were already exposed, spread across open ground between compounds. The Taliban opened fire. The firefight was immediate and intense. Alpha Company returned fire, but they were pinned, unable to advance or retreat. The company commander called for sniper support. Dalton's team engaged first, taking shots at targets on the north side of the village. Quinn had a different angle, targets that Dalton couldn't see from his position. Chen called ranges and wind. Quinn settled into her rifle. Range, 637 meters to the first target, a fighter behind a wall with a PKM machine gun that was pouring fire into Alpha Company's position. Quinn adjusted for wind, temperature, and the slight downward angle. She fired. The machine gun went silent. She didn't pause. Chen was already calling the next target. A fighter on a rooftop, 580 meters, moving between shooting positions. Quinn tracked him, led his movement, and fired. He dropped. The M110 was semi-automatic, faster follow-up shots than a bolt-action rifle. Quinn used that advantage. She moved through targets methodically, taking shots every 12 to 15 seconds. Each shot was calculated, precise, deliberate. No wasted ammunition. No misses. Chen kept count. 7 targets down in 4 minutes. Alpha Company was returning fire more effectively now, able to maneuver, because the heaviest enemy positions had been neutralized. Quinn kept scanning, kept shooting. A fighter appeared in a window. 695 meters. She adjusted and fired. Down. Dalton's voice came over the radio. He asked who was taking the eastern shots. The Tactical Operations Center confirmed it was Quinn's position. There was a pause. Then Dalton acknowledged and continued his own engagement. The firefight lasted 23 minutes. When it ended, Alpha Company had 2 wounded, both non-critical. The Taliban had withdrawn, leaving behind 11 dead. Intelligence later confirmed that Quinn had accounted for 9 of those 11. Dalton's team had taken the other 2. Captain Merrick called both sniper teams back to the Tactical Operations Center after Alpha Company secured the village. He asked Quinn for her assessment. She said the enemy had prepared good positions, but their discipline broke when they started taking casualties from angles they hadn't anticipated. The operation continued for 2 more days. Quinn provided overwatch for 4 additional movements. She took 6 more shots, all hits, all at ranges beyond 600 meters. By the time Alpha Company returned to FOB Salerno, her reputation had changed completely. Staff Sergeant Dalton found her the day after they got back. He didn't apologize directly, but he asked if she'd be willing to run a training session for the other snipers on engagement techniques in complex terrain. She agreed. During the session, Dalton asked her how she'd maintained accuracy under pressure during the firefight. Quinn said it was the same as shooting at home. You control what you can control. Breathing, trigger press, sight picture. The pressure doesn't matter if you focus on the fundamentals. One of the younger snipers asked if she'd been scared. She said yes, but fear didn't move the crosshairs. Training did. Repetition did. Trusting that you'd prepared correctly. After the session, Dalton pulled her aside. He said he'd made assumptions based on her experience level and her gender, and he'd been wrong on both counts. She was a better combat sniper than most of the people he'd worked with in 8 years. He said it plainly, no hedging, just the truth. Quinn appreciated that. She didn't need Dalton to like her. She needed him to trust her. Trust had to be earned, and she'd earned it the only way that mattered, by doing the job right when lives depended on it.